Hello there, Star Wars friends and fans. I am Star Wars Only, and today is the Chatooine show. We're trying to do these every Friday nights or every other Friday. The show where we talk about the Star Wars news, topics in the fandoms, and simply chat about Star Wars. I'm your host, Star Wars Only, with co-host Darth Daddy Lunga and the Goldman. There were a lot of anniversaries this week. The Phantom Menace turned 21 years old. Revenge of the Sith turned 15 years old. And just yesterday, The Empire Strikes Back turned 40. Today, the Chatooine show is mainly going to talk about the rumors going around that civil war is happening over there at Lucasfilm between people like Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau. We will also get to talk about the Mandalorian Disney Galleries, The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, which released its 4th episode today, talking about the technology behind the scenes of The Mandalorian and recent news surrounding The Mandalorian with the big twist in the story. But I want to start off talking about the rumor that's going around Lucasfilm at the moment that civil war is happening. And it's basically between Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau. I personally have been a big advocate for Jon Favreau for quite some time now, at least when it comes to running Lucasfilm. But I do kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on this rumor. I want to hear your thoughts first about the rumor itself that there's civil war happening at Lucasfilm, and then I'll actually get into the orientation of the rumor, where it actually stemmed from. So, Goldman, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about a rumored civil war between two factions over there at Lucasfilm? You have one between Kathleen Kennedy and the other one is between Jon Favreau. What are your thoughts?
I honestly think it's all a little silly, to be honest. Kathleen Kennedy is the one who brought Jon Favreau on to do The Mandalorian. And if we'll get to this later, but if you watch the 4th episode of The Mandalorian documentary, Favreau talks about how like someone like Kathleen Kennedy is really important in getting all the technology needed for the show. And Kathleen talks about how she put Jon Favreau and the other people around to make this show. So I don't believe that they're all just doing that as an act just to make it seem like things are good behind the scenes. I have a lot of trouble believing that there's a civil war. Might there be some drama potentially? I mean, Kathleen Kennedy hasn't done a particularly great job at running Star Wars in the past, but I do feel like as a whole, Star Wars is heading in the right direction with Disney Plus, and they're getting back on good graces with the fans who don't like the sequels. So I just find it hard to believe that there is a civil war brewing inside Lucasfilm.
All right, Lunga, what do you think? Do you think that Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau are really having two of their factions kind of subtly go at each other over there at Lucasfilm?
Complete bupkis. Complete nonsense. It's just used to try to make people feel better about themselves. No, it's bullshit. They're fine. They're working together. I mean, can there be issues like any boss and employee have? I mean, they always have creative differences. They always have things they go at each other, no more than anybody else. But no, yeah, there's no civil war. The only civil war happened was a movie on the Disney side for MCU, quite a few years back. That's the only civil war there was.
Well, and it did really, really good numbers too. So maybe a civil war can do good numbers for us over here in the Star Wars realm. I've always said that Jon Favreau, I think, is great as a producer, a director, a writer, an actor. He really feels that almost Orson Welles, like he did back when it came to like something like Citizen Kane. No, he hasn't done anything, movie-wise, Citizen Kane-wise, Jon Favreau, that is. But still, he fills that role of knowing what film is and having that understanding of it. And I think from watching the new Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian, Kathleen Kennedy also has some of those credentials to not really be the person who knows everything about filmmaking, but actually ask the right questions and do what a producer normally is supposed to do and give your director and your writer what they want in terms of what they need to use to tell the story. I think they tease at this a little bit, like you were saying, Goldman, in Disney Galleries The Mandalorian on this last episode, episode 4, it came out today. And Jon Favreau was talking about the meetings he had with Kathy, and she was talking about bringing out that technology that he was talking about in the experience he had on The Lion King and what was the other one, The Jungle Book. So I like seeing Jon Favreau from that aspect of it because it showed that he was a filmmaker who had tried stuff and brought in new technology. But then we get to Kathleen Kennedy as a producer on The Mandalorian, and she's the one who actually brings some of that to fruition. She's the one who provides some of that budget, if you will, and getting the means, and ILM mainly. ILM's a big reason The Mandalorian is the way it is with the technology and I forget what you would even call it. It's kind of like a surround blue screen. It's digital technology like you've never seen before. And actually, I was going to put a clip of John Favreau saying stagecraft. Thank you. Yes, stagecraft technology, and it truly is revolutionary for its time. So I think it's hard to believe that Kathy being an executive producer on the show with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, I think it's hard to look at those three people and say, okay, well, out of the three, I like two. So therefore, those two are the ones who actually worked on the show. And this other lady who I don't care for, she didn't really work on the show. I don't believe that. And you're hearing a lot of that going around right now. But Goldman, I want to get your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy and The Mandalorian and the influence she may or may not have had on the technology aspect of it. What you thought about the new episode that came out today, and how has that influenced your decision and thoughts on it?
When it comes to The Mandalorian, Kathleen Kennedy probably doesn't have much of a story input, but in terms of her getting the right people around to make Favreau's story come to life, she's pretty important with that. Like, she was the one who put Filoni and Favreau together and said, you guys should work on something, and they've done a great job with The Mandalorian so far. And I think one aspect of the documentary that I really liked, and it's kind of sold me more on Favreau becoming the head of Lucasfilm, was just the whole stagecraft technology. And it's not that it was so much that it was so advanced, but when you look at the way he talked about the Jungle Book and the Lion King, Favreau is really someone who is always trying to learn how to become a better filmmaker, how to push the limits of technology with filmmaking. And I think just having someone like that, someone with that mindset who's always willing to learn, and someone who's always willing to push the boundaries, especially when it comes to Star Wars, because that really honors George Lucas. When you look at Lucas's 6 films, each one he tried to do something new in terms of just filmmaking. So I think having someone like Lucas and Favreau take over Lucasfilm is a good idea, and it really honors George Lucas in ways that people say Kathleen Kennedy does not.
No, that's a very good point. Lunga, you have any thoughts on Jon Favreau kind of stepping up, taking over for Kathy eventually, if she does pass down in 2021? So we can kind of stem the conversation.
I mean, I'm definitely in favor of that. I've been petitioning, campaigning that, whatever you want to call it, since I first started thinking about it. But yeah, I'm in favor of it, and he does seem to know what he's doing, and he does have a good eye for what Star Wars fans and what Star Wars needs. So I'm all in favor of that. And especially, like I said, he did, with his Mandalorian things, it seems like his brain baby, if you will, with the technology and the stagecraft. And I learned so many new words watching that documentary this week.
Oh yeah, and what was that one, parallax or something? Parallax.
They actually put up the definition.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, I'm taking film classes right now. I'll add this to the list.
And the cool thing about it is that this whole stagecraft technology, because he kind of sums it up near the end. It's like everything that makes it isn't brand new technology. It's technology that's already being used. It's just being utilized and put together in a different fashion to make this whole thing called stagecraft come to life, and implementing that whole gamers timing thing into it, to where like how you develop a game,
real time and whatnot,
and putting that into developing these backgrounds for the movies. And the big thing and I've said this a bunch of times with friends of mine and other shows, it's the coordination of a major piece of practical effect in conjunction with the CGI FX and stuff behind it, and it makes it
finds that balance, which you needed. And that was a big problem that people have with the prequel trilogy, is that George Lucas. Yeah, one thing I did like about Kathy and what she said in this episode of the Mandalorian docuseries was that she was saying that yet again George Lucas was 10 years ahead of his time, and she was right, because even when it came to the prequel trilogy, Attack of the Clones was the first fully digital shot film. That can't even really be called film at that point, because they didn't use film to film it, and so that changed how we make films. I have a digital camera right by me. I mean, we all kind of do in our own senses, that now it's easier to make films because of George Lucas using the technology that he had available during the prequel era, and he had the money for it that other studios and people didn't or did not want to invest in. And due to his experimental nature and innovative nature, he wanted to change something with the prequel trilogy, and he did that. But the problem was the actors weren't ready for it. The world technically wasn't ready for it. Natalie Portman, Liam Neeson, all these actors had talked about the problems they had on set actually interacting with the world, because it was too much blue screen, nothing but blue screen. Now with what they're doing with The Mandalorian, you have an immersive set. You can see everything around you, and it can adapt to the way you want it to and actually feel like a real world. And I think that helps the actors. I think it helps the immersion, and I think it really shows how far technology has come, mainly when it comes to film, due to something like George Lucas. And I think it's kind of a little poetic in a way that he started the digital revolution when it came to film. And now that he left Star Wars, they start using that to not only innovate. We've innovated twice with Star Wars, the original trilogy, now the prequel trilogy. I was always wondering what Lucas would do with his sequel trilogy, how he would innovate it again. I think now, if we're being honest, I have my answer. If not a version of the answer, is that someone like Jon Favreau, if he had been hired to direct the sequel trilogy around this time frame, let's say in the late 2000 teens, whatever the hell you want to call them, early 2020s, maybe Jon Favreau could have brought a new innovative technology to the Star Wars landscape like this. And I wonder how that would have changed the sequel trilogy.
You know what's interesting to think about when sorry to cut you off, but
No,
when the stagecraft technology works so good with The Mandalorian, because Mandalorian's a show, and if you watch the show, there's not many really wide angles. Like all the characters and all the shots, most of them, they're pretty close. So when you're thinking about a film, say the sequel trilogy, one thing that's undeniably great about the sequels is the cinematography and how there's so many nice wide shots. And I wonder going forward, maybe with Taika's film or any of the other 2020 films, is there a way they can increase the scope of this stagecraft technology? I like how at the end of the documentary, they refer to it as George's garage. And now this is something that George Lucas always kind of dreamed of doing. Yep. So I wonder if maybe now it's probably this stage itself is so expensive. So if they were to make it into like a stadium, that would be really expensive. But you never know. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, they have the technology where they can make this room even larger to really help with the production of the films. And I think seeing the way The Mandalorian might influence the Star Wars films going forward is something that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be curious to see who they use from The Mandalorian and seeing the technology and how it's going to affect future films, just like someone like Taika Waititi working on the 2022 Star Wars film. Sticking to The Mandalorian, I do kind of want to talk about the new, not really rumor, but there's been some news going around with a big twist to the story that we've had some casting news. This guy named Timothy Olyphant, I believe is how you say his name. He's playing a Olyphant, thank you. He is playing Cobb Vanth in the new series, The Mandalorian Season 2. He's playing Cobb Vanth, who actually has the Boba Fett armor. And what's interesting about this is that he comes from the Aftermath books. And basically in that, Cobb Vanth is some kind of sheriff of Chatooine town or something. Jawa's found the Boba Fett armor. Freetown? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay. I read the book. I don't remember this exact chapter, but the way the Aftermath trilogy was every few chapters there would be this interlude chapter, which just takes place at some random point at some like different point in the galaxy during that time span. Like they had a chapter about Jar Jar and what he was up to after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So I believe this scene that they're talking about is they never confirmed that it's Boba Fett's armor. But it's implied. It's like one of those. Yeah. It's a heavy implication.
They say it's Mandalorian armor for sure.
Yeah, Mandalorian armor found by Jawa scavenging Jabba's sail barge. Well, there was only one person wearing Mandalorian armor.
So you're saying it's Jango Fett.
That brings up an interesting question. Why, if the armor is outside of the Sarlacc, why isn't Boba Fett? Did the Sarlacc just eat Boba Fett and spit out the armor?
Who's to say that Boba Fett didn't make it out of the pit? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, the Jawas dragged old Boba out, and they were like, "Oh, he's dead. So why don't we just strip him of his armor, which is Mandalorian, worth a lot, probably Beskar armor."
Right. Or they didn't drag him out. Maybe he dragged himself out, and he was passed out, and they found him, and they just stripped his armor, and he woke up naked. What the hell, guys?
Well, he's probably happy to be alive, but.
Yeah, if he's happy about anything, that'd be news to me. But I am interested in seeing how the story develops now, because last week on the show, we talked about how I was a little annoyed and getting upset with all the cameos that were rumored to be in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Like I said earlier, as long as they don't interfere with our cameos, I'm sure the audience doesn't know this, but we all three actually have cameos in the Mandalorian seasons 2. As long as they don't interfere with ours, I'm okay. But it seems like they've done so much with Hera, with Bo-Katan. Who else is
Ahsoka, Rex,
Ahsoka, Boba Fett. I mean, you name it.
Mhm.
Lunga, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. The only thing we haven't really heard anything about Hera per se.
Some rumors were like Fandom Wire. I think they said that she's supposed to be appearing with Ahsoka when they show up. They're all going to show up together. Her, Sabine, and Hera.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, the only ones I see, and the funny thing is I'm glad you brought this up because I was thinking about this because I've been still one of the biggest skeptics that Boba Fett was going to be in this, and then when this news was coming out, it's like, well, I guess I was wrong. I guess they are going this far, you know. But I did say when I first heard about the Tamora Morrison, I go, but here's the thing. He also could be most likely, especially with the Ahsoka tie-in, be playing Rex, not necessarily Boba Fett. But the wires were saying, no, it's Boba Fett. He's playing Boba Fett. Now this news comes out. What that tells me is people think Boba Fett's in it, but it's not. It's him in Boba Fett's armor, and there is no Boba Fett. And it's him who's a sheriff who comes up and gets Ming-Na's character, Shennick Fan.
Yeah, I don't remember the name.
Shennick Fan, yeah. So he's the one who actually comes to get her. So it's not. That's why they give you that tease, but it's not really Boba Fett. It's him in Boba Fett's armor, and Tamora Morrison, who if he is cast, is most likely going to be playing Rex. So it's just kind of like, you think you're getting Boba Fett, but you're not. So that's what I think.
It's gonna have a good payoff, and I like Andrew's comment here, where it's Cobb Vanth is one of the redeeming aspects of the Aftermath trilogy, and it may be worth exploring as a character in Mandalorian season 2. I like this because honestly, think of it like this: if you're a casual fan, and you've never seen, you've never read the Aftermath series, and you don't really know, you're not like us, where we basically spoil season 2 before it even comes out. You see this guy come up in Boba Fett's armor, and you're like, oh shit, that's Boba Fett. The ending scene is, let's say Din Djarin kicks his ass, and then the helmet comes off, and it's some guy you've never seen before. And even Din Djarin's like, oh, you're not Boba Fett. Like, that's the big twist of the season. And then it is revealed that, Boba Fett is played by Tamora Morrison, and he's actually trying to get his armor back. He teams up with Din Djarin, whatever happens to get his armor. Or hear me out now, we could launch this into its own little series or show. We know that there's rumors going around that Boba Fett's getting his own series or his own project on Disney Plus. I feel like this wouldn't be a bad way to catapult him into his own show, give it a story. Personally, I just think this adds so much more interest into the story of Mandalorian season 2 and what they could use from this, timeline or story with Cobb Vanth in general. Him taking the Boba Fett armor adds a lot more to the character of Boba Fett instead of him just being a badass. Him getting the armor back and what that means, a sense of symbolism, if you will, of the armor. I like that idea. Let's see. What else topics can we cover? There's not the Mandalorian, Clone Wars season 7. I don't know if you guys heard this, but it has done big numbers for Disney Plus. It was the most streamed original digital show in April and May. Number 2 only to The Mandalorian, which was followed by Stranger Things from Netflix. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the season 7 for the Clone Wars being basically the number 1 show everywhere in America and digital streaming. I mean, the streaming wars is a big thing, and it's basically what's been the reason we're having the Snyder Cut on HBO Max is likely a reason we're having a lot of new streaming content because of how well they've been doing. Do you guys think that the season 7 success that it had will influence the future for Star Wars shows? Lunga, I want to get your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I think a lot of people were kind of poo-pooing it, thinking, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. The moment I heard Siege of Mandalore, before season came out, and like, you're going to go into the Siege of Mandalore, I'm like, dude, this is going to have big implications. It's going to have it basically lived up to my expectations. A lot of people, I don't think, were seeing it as that. And it was such a cinematic event, which we talked about before, how, great. It's felt like a movie watching this, that it really drew people in, aside from the nostalgia of people like, wanting to see the Clone Wars again. It just had a lot of other stuff to draw people in. And I was convinced of that then, and it's proven me right now. So this isn't surprising news to me, and I'm glad to see it. It's nice to see. I mean, we're talking about all streaming services. We got, people saying Star Wars is dead, but yet 2 Star Wars products are 1 and 2 in streaming. I mean, that's That's
And
huge.
Star Wars is dead. Remember?
Yeah, and not only that, like Mandalorian came out last year.
Yeah.
It's May and April, and that's beating Stranger Things, which also doesn't have any new episodes out. I'll give you that. But I would argue that Netflix not only has a bigger audience right now than Disney Plus, but the fact that Clone Wars and Mandalorian are more demanded than Stranger Things.
And Netflix has a new series or new premiere stuff coming out like every 2-3 weeks right now during this pandemic. So I mean, it's constantly something coming out with Netflix.
Oh yeah, and I'll give a quick shout out on a good Netflix show. It's called Dark. It's a German show about time travel. Absolutely love it. You talk about film wise, you want a good show to watch. I think you guys would enjoy that. It's very complex, but the streaming wars are a real thing, and right now it seems like Disney Plus might have a very big leg up on the competition. Not only with something like Clone Wars Season 7 being the most popular show in America right now, over the past 2 months, it seems, but also in the numbers. They recently, I think they beat, what was it, 20? There was a certain million. It kind of sucks when it comes to these big numbers that Disney Plus has. But it reached a milestone a lot faster than what they were expecting. So now they're thinking that they may reach 50 million subscribers on Disney Plus by 2025, which would be amazing for
and we haven't even gotten to the Marvel shows yet.
Haven't gotten to the Marvel. Yeah. Just started with the Star Wars one. We haven't even gotten to the actual swing of things. Goldman,
I got 3 more
thoughts. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts, Goldman, on season 7 being a popular season for Star Wars, Clone Wars, and Disney Plus, and also what you think the future of Disney Plus and Star Wars is going to be like because of this.
I think the success of the Clone Wars season 7 really says a lot about how Disney seems to have found the gold mine with the Mandalorians as a whole. Because, you know, the Siege of Mandalore was the big focus of season 7. In a sense, it kind of ties in a little bit to the Mandalorian show as a whole. Maybe that's something they will reference in season 2, the Siege of Mandalore. I believe it was actually briefly mentioned in season 1. I don't remember. But one thing I like that they're doing is that they're really trying to tie everything together. That wasn't something they did before with the sequels. You know, if they have, like, Clone Wars just finished, they have the Mandalorian going on. If there's a Rebels sequel show, like all these stories and these different properties are tying nicely together. And what it allows people to do, it gives people who are basically the casual fans reasons to watch the Clone Wars. Like a lot of my friends recently, including my brother, they've just started watching the Clone Wars and they finish it and they love it. And they've even watched Rebels and they've loved that, even though Rebels isn't as popular. So it's giving the more casual audience a reason to watch these animated shows. And it adds so much more appreciation for these animated shows. Because if you look at shows like Avatar, I think the best thing about streaming shows is that they allow people to watch these shows that came out a long time ago. Like Avatar is really popular right now on Netflix. I'm watching it.
Number 1.
Yeah, it's number 1.
It's a huge thing.
Really popular. And this makes me think, this might be a little bit of a segue. But if the Mandalorians are this hidden gold mine for Star Wars, it makes me wonder for the films, what if they do tap into that Old Republic storyline? And I believe the Old Republic's about the Jedi versus the Mandalorians. So what if like an underlying theme of all their properties are the Mandalorians and they tie the films in that way? I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that was, to be honest, even with the old lore in the EU for the longest time, with the Sith being gone for so long, they're hiding, I should say. That was the Jedi's biggest foe, was the Mandalorians.
Yeah, it's what caused the divide between Revan and the Jedi Council at the time. Is that Revan wanted to go fight this war with the Malik, and the Council was like, "No, that's not our business." And he took down Mandalore the Great, I believe. Yeah. I mean, that was a big accomplishment for that time and for that era, and it really set the precedent of like what Jedi, kind of showing the start of Jedi turning against the Jedi Order, if you will. But very rich history right there. And Goldman, I think you have a good point. I think using the Mandalorian, or maybe even something like the whole like Boba Fett series that may happen, project, whatever they're doing there, that could also kind of slightly hint and reference older stuff, because he's older than Din Djarin, I would assume. I mean, he was there with Jango Fett, and maybe he could get some history behind that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities on tying in the Mandalorians with Jedi in terms of Old Republic stuff. Personally, I don't see them doing that, and the reason I say this is because they're already starting a new era with the High Republic. I think trying to do something with the High Republic and the Mandalorians at the same time might be a little much, but I will say it's a good It's a good opener. Like it's a good way to kind of segue and get into that. The next topic I do want to cover though is the Cassian Andor series. There has been a tease going on for the Cassian Andor series. Let me see if I can get an image of it up on here. I don't know if you guys remember. I mean, I don't know how many of you actually seen the film. I know all three of us likely have, but Erin Kellyman, who has played Enfys Nest, was asked on Instagram recently if she'd be appearing in the new Cassian Andor series, to which she replied with no spoilers here. So, Goldman, I want to get your thoughts on a possible cameo for Enfys Nest in the Cassian Andor show. This is going to come out in 2021. So filming would have to begin later this year. I know it's supposed to start up again in July. What do you think about Enfys Nest showing up in Cassian Andor series?
It makes me, if it's true, it really makes me glad that they're making an effort to tie in everything. Even something like Solo, which was not beloved and no one saw it. Like they made hints at it during the Clone Wars, like Maul referenced Crimson Dawn. And with the Cassian Andor show, if you look at on the right of that image you're seeing right now, that's Benthic Two Tubes. He was in Rogue One. He was one of Saw Gerrera's partisans. So maybe it makes me wonder, will Saw Gerrera play a role in the Cassian Andor show? I think I just really like continuity between my properties. I think it gives the casual audience a more of a reason to watch certain things. And it makes them feel good when they did watch something and it's referenced somewhere else. So if this casting is true, I don't particularly care about the character much. She was in one movie. She hasn't been in any other storyline. But if it is true, I'm glad that they're really making an effort to tie these other properties, whether it be the movies to the animated shows, to live action shows. I really love how they're trying to tie it all together.
They're not even tying the show together, but it's creating a new lore.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's creating a new lore, a new history. I mean, Saw Gerrera, we saw him in Rogue One, but Saw Gerrera started out animated.
Clone Wars.
So I mean, that's where we got him from, was animated, and they brought him to live action. So him being in it, that wouldn't surprise me at all, because they've already, between Clone Wars and Rogue One, and they've played him as a major figure, a divisive figure in the rebellion. You know what I mean? He was more that militant rebel rather than the rest trying to find a peaceful solution. So I wouldn't surprise me to see that. But yeah, and tying Enfys Nest in, it all makes sense, because they have all these factions and all these groups and stuff, which is, you see a lot of that happening when there's an oppressive regime at hand. You know what I mean? You see all these underground movements, either rebels or bounty hunters or underworld groups that all end up like working with each other or against each other, given the circumstances under the regime, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think personally, I'm not a big Enfys Nest fan. It doesn't really matter to me if she appears or not. I wasn't a big fan of the character in the film, but hey, like you were saying, ways of tying it in with other series and kind of Saw Gerrera getting his start on the Clone Wars, showing up in the Rogue One. That was a big deal for a lot of Clone Wars fans, because it was like, wow, I get to see this character go across multiple platforms of Star Wars content, from show to film. Now we're seeing her go from film to a series that she may have a prominent role in. You don't really know what they're going to do with her. I'm getting a little bit more excited for the Cassian Andor series as time goes on because of these kind of cameos. I'm curious if they're going to do anything like a sequel to Clone Wars on the Disney Plus series anytime soon. Speaking of Clone Wars, big shout out to Film Edit Studios. Thank you very much for the super chat donation, my friend. He says, my cousin won't watch the Clone Wars because he says there's no point, because he already knows how the movies end, which is annoying because I really want someone to talk about the Clone Wars in person. It's not a.
Does your cousin not want to watch the prequels either?
Yeah. Like, imagine that in the 90s. Oh, it's a young Darth Vader? Wow, I wonder how his story ends. Like, guess I won't watch it, George. Like,
he's wrong, though, in a sense. Yes, you know that where the prequels end, but what the Clone Wars and, to a sense, Rebels does so well is it creates these new characters, and it ties in the events of their stories to the events of the movies. If we say the Rebels never came out, right, and we're watching the end of Clone Wars, the Siege of Mandalore, that's a really dramatic scene. You don't know what's going to happen to these clones. You don't know what's going to happen to Rex. You don't know what's going to happen to Ahsoka. Like, yeah, you know Order 66 happens, but you don't know what happens to these specific characters. And now that we're watching Rebels, and if they ever do a Rebels sequel show, like, yeah, we know the events of the sequels, but we don't know where these characters go. And also, these animated shows, they really expand the lore into something that the films don't even remotely touch. So the idea that you can't watch a story or you can't read a story because you know the ending, I think is nonsense. It's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Speaking of the journey, one journey that never got finished was the Star Wars Force Unleashed 3 game. That was something we've all wanted to continue the story of Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. But recently, in a live stream, Sam Witwer, who played Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games back when LucasArts was still a thing, RIP my boy, recently revealed some information about Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 3. He says at the end of The Force Unleashed 2, he cuts off Vader's hand and he captures Vader. I'm not comfortable sharing everything we discussed, but the idea was that the biggest mistake ever, and that Vader, like he was toying with Luke, the Force Unleashed 1 and 2 games were all about Vader toying with Starkiller. At some point, there would be a confrontation where Starkiller's fighting Vader, and everything that's worked before suddenly isn't working now. He's like, I cut off your hand, and Vader says, that wasn't my hand. I have no hand. Witwer continues, Starkiller's fighting, and Starkiller says, how are you doing this? Vader answers simply with whatever the first line in the original trilogy Star Wars script was, which I believe was, I am Lord Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. It was something along those lines, and this ends the conversation. He's no match for this guy. There's a little spoiler for an alternate universe. So I want to get your guys' thoughts. Lunga, I want to hear your thoughts first. What do you think about Force Unleashed 3? The details that Sam Witwer just revealed. Basically, Starkiller fights Vader, and you learn that it was all part of his ploy. It was all part of his plan to get captured by Starkiller at the end of Force Unleashed 2.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I mean, that's the only way they could have did it. You know what I mean? It's like, because they kind of locked themselves. I mean, I guess they're calling it an alternative. I mean, at the time, it wasn't really an alternative universe at the time. It was supposed to be the story within a story that no one knew about, I guess, if you will. Now, as far as the games themselves go, I enjoyed the games. They were fun to play. You know what I mean? It was a real fast-paced game to play, and it didn't have a lot of the, for me, cumbersome game mechanics that Fallen Order has. But then the story was cool. But at the same time, it's like every time I watch the story and you get into it, I'm like, hold on, though. He's not supposed to exist. And isn't he a little damn too OP compared to the, who ends up beating or winning, with Luke and the other one? It's like he's ridiculously OP. Like, we haven't seen that anywhere.
Just because he pulls a Star Destroyer out of the sky with his bare hands, Lunga, does not make him overpowered. You are shilling for Disney. You know Rey is far more overpowered. You married to
right.
I mean,
which brings up an interesting topic. Anyone who says if there is anyone who says Rey is overpowered and loves the Force Unleashed games, you have a problem, my friend.
Ray admit that one's overpowered. Both are overpowered, at least. I mean,
Ray's overpowered. Ray couldn't drag a transport back to her, and Starkiller can drag a whole Star Destroyer.
Yeah. Well, you got.
He also fell from space and was not, and just knocking Star Destroyers out of his way as he's falling.
Oh yeah, I remember in the first game,
like flies, swap.
He like jumps out and is like just taking out TIE fighters like it's not even a doesn't even sweat. That's one thing I loved about like kind of the different era of the Star Wars fans, where like during the time of the Force Unleashed games coming out, it was mostly like, young guys who were into Star Wars, and you could tell it's like the Eminem edgy white guy crowd of we're all like, yeah, I'm mad about something, and then you get to like the new Star Wars and the big overpowered characters now Rey and the whole what people would criticize and call identity politics. Not what I'm calling it, but I'm just saying that's what people have criticized it for. It's just funny to see how the times have changed. But Goldman, I want to get your thoughts on a possible Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 3. Do you wish it had happened? What are your thoughts about the new information about Force Unleashed 3, the story that Sam Witwer just kind of revealed?
Fun fact, your audience might be disappointed in me, but I've never played any of the Force Unleashed games. So if they make a Force Unleashed 3, it would be, I'd play it. I'd play the other two. I want to play all the games. I just haven't. I'd ask questions as to how it ties into the canon. Is it just going to be like a Legends storyline? How would that feel? But I don't have any opinion really about the Force Unleashed 3. I didn't even know that he made comments about the Force Unleashed 3. If it's something they want to do, if it's a good story, sure. I'm surprised they wouldn't just, I guess, redo the Force Unleashed storyline in a sense to make it fit into the canon. I haven't. Again, you guys could answer this better than I could. If they were to bring the Force Unleashed storyline into the canon, would it contradict much that's been established?
Yeah, someone made a good comment here a second ago talking about how that was Ezra Bridger being weak. Basically saying that he had influence from Starkiller, which he did. They've already used like Starkiller as a name for the base and the sequels. It definitely would contradict a lot of canon stuff if they tried to bring in number 3. I think if anything, what they would do, first of all, way too much money to put in for a third one. LucasArts was a disaster for a long time during this process, and so the odds of them making this game is basically slim to none.
None. And to be fair, it was already pushing canon originally. As it was already pushing canon.
In what way?
Limits. I mean, well, there was like parts at the end of the first one, I think, where like Obi-Wan showed up for a second. Like in the book, you're like, whoa, what the heck? And then it's proxy. But there was a lot of things that at least when it came to like the power of what Force users could have, and kind of like same with the whole Rey thing of the training that would go into it, because the older Starkiller is overpowered. I'll give Lunga that. But you want to talk about overpowered? Let's go to the Old Republic. I mean, those people were summoning lightning from the sky. But Starkiller's he was a video game character. That's why I think he was so overpowered. Yeah. And so that kind of broke canon on what part of this story is actually canon. If you read the book, it was a little bit more contained. But even then, what was it? Ram Koda having his own militia. I mean, there's a lot of things that were in there in terms of books I don't think lined up properly well with the expanded universe. But it's beyond my knowledge as well.
Interesting.
Because even Knights of the Old Republic, it was so long ago that it can fit nicely to wherever you want it, regardless of the canon. Like Disney can bring it back if they wanted to, completely intact, and it doesn't mess up anything Disney's done. You know what I mean? This one, though, being set, in and around the original trilogy, just before the original trilogy, it's messy. It's messy. It's very messy.
Yeah, Darth Vader having an apprentice who kind of almost kills him and whatnot. Yeah. And mainly with the ending of the second one, where he's captured, and now it's like, well, what happens? I mean, you got this clone guy running around, and the big thing with the first, not the first Force Unleashed, but the second one was him being a clone and finding out, is he the actual Starkiller or is he a clone? That question has yet to been answered. It was a big kind of twist to the story on, is this guy really Starkiller or is he just a clone? And I remember looking at like the art for it, like the little extra credit stuff for it, and them hinting that this isn't the guy in the second one isn't Starkiller. He's a clone, but the actual Starkiller was still alive. So I would have been interested in seeing him come back in some form, or just getting some closure to that story and seeing what would happen. Starkiller pulled a Star Destroyer out of orbit. I mean, you talk about overpowered. Starkiller overpowered. Understatement.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely an understatement. He was extremely overpowered. And it is one of those things where in hindsight, you look at a game like the Force Unleashed games, and I played the first one a few months ago. It might have been it might have been back in 2019 before the Jedi Fallen Order came out. I was about to call it number 3. Before that came out, I played the Force Unleashed, and the game mechanics are so vastly different. I don't think I can ever play Force Unleashed again after playing Jedi Fallen Order.
Is it simpler?
Fallen Order is simpler.
Fallen Order.
Not Fallen Order. I mean,
Force Unleashed.
Okay, simpler, but not in a. The camera angles and the movement and the visibility of Starkiller himself, it's all very 2000s, if you will. It's not what it hasn't aged that great. It's what I'm trying to say, and so I'm not a big fan anymore. But it's
as opposed to Fallen Order, where every step you take, you're falling off a cliff that you can't see.
Yeah, and up until recently, I couldn't go back and fight any stormtroopers. That's all I care about, honestly, at this point.
Have any of you tried out the new mode in Fallen Order?
I've been playing it a lot over the past few weeks. Personally, I love it. There's some. I will admit, I have an Xbox One X, so I would think it's not a PC, but I would think the capabilities of it would be a little better than what I got, which I pulled in every lightsaber character, like the guy from Dathomir, both of the sisters, the old Jedi Master that you had, every lightsaber person you could, plus Cal and Cal's Inquisitor form, and had them all fight each other. and boy, that frame rate dropped faster than my pants whenever. Like, it was bad.
I'm thinking about getting Fallen Order for PC. It is on PC, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's on PC.
I'm thinking about getting it for PC. Maybe I might. I mean, it sounds weird because I've been playing more PC recently. Maybe it'll be easier for me on PC because I'm literally, 12 inches from the screen.
It would be. Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're playing at home on your TV, you're 5 feet away in your couch or whatever. Where here I got the monitor right in front of me, so it might be easier to play that way. So I might try it on PC and see.
I recommend it. I think it's not only is it a really good game, but the new mode really adds a lot to it. This last topic, well, not the last topic. I think it's probably the second to last topic that we'll cover. This is the last, in my opinion, really interesting topic. A writer for StarWars.com. What's the phrase in the industry? It's not really fired, but he got corona, basically. That's what I think they're going to say. He got corona. A writer for StarWars.com has got removed, technically for not liking the movie. The guy's name is Alex Kane. He is a writer or former writer for StarWars.com, and he was a writer for the Star Wars website for almost 3 years. And recently, he put out that he had been removed from the contributors page and likely will not be returning to write for the Star Wars website. And according to this guy, he tweeted out Rose Tico deserved better on Twitter in response to her limited role in The Rise of Skywalker. Alex said he has not written for the website since November or December of last year, and that Star Wars was the lowest paying client that he works with. So Lunga, as our writer of the kind of group, and I know it's different because it's freelance writing. You've actually written a book, Souls of Magic Dawn. If you haven't checked it out, you should. I want to get your thoughts on Alex being let go, if you will, from Lucasfilm, and just kind of the situation here. What do you guys think about this?
I mean, I got to be honest. Once you hear the word freelance, let go, fired is kind of a harsh term, just because freelance people are hired and let go like on a regular basis. It's a churn. You know what I mean? They constantly let people in, and you only know you made it when you're not a freelancer anymore and they hire you as an employee. You know what I mean? But a lot of writers are freelancers. You know what I mean? But with that comes a sense of freedom and a sense of independence of thought. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you hired me for a reason. Did you hire me just to, am I a PR person or did you hire me to be a writer and a critic? You know what I mean? So, I mean, this, I would get it. I would have to see exactly what he's talking about with the writing. It almost seems weird because you would think that opinion is something Disney would be like in favor of, not against.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's a nothing burger. He is in West Central Illinois, so he's near me. Maybe I should reach out to this guy. Maybe we can get him on the show. See what he has to say.
Maybe.
I was actually thinking the same thing. Like when he put this out, I was like, honestly, I would like to hear his side on it a little more because longer, like you said, when I heard freelance writer, I was a little bit, and I looked, I try to do my due diligence and try to look a little bit more into these things than I normally do, or I would say some other YouTubers do. And I mean, he didn't openly say that they were the lowest paying client or anything. This was replies to everybody. But the actual words they said, and I'll read it tweet for tweet. The first tweet says, finally got removed from the contributor section of StarWars.com for ... not liking one bad movie. I wrote for them for almost 3 years. It's a bummer. Anyway, freelancers, all you have is your voice, and companies like Disney will absolutely work to silence it the minute you speak the truth about anything. Stay honest. His last tweet that came out 2 hours after the first little rant was, to be clear, this was a small symbolic gesture that affects little, and yet I've known it was coming since the moment I tweeted, #Rose Tico deserved better. But if they wait a few months, they can just deny it, and it'll be fine. So it's basically sounding like he stopped writing for them back around the time Rise of Skywalker came out, and they didn't like, according to him, they didn't like the aspect that he said that Rose should have gotten better.
That he had an opinion.
Yeah, basically, he had an opinion about the film. What I find odd about it is that he's saying it's just because of the Rose Tico thing. But then someone asked about Brian Young, who I don't know. I don't keep up too much about him. That's the Geeks and Gamers side of the fandom. The Fandom Menace knows a lot about Brian Young that I truly don't. But from what I've gathered about Brian Young, and this is not him, this is Alex Kane, the guy who has said he's gotten fired from the Star Wars website. Brian Young, according to Alex Kane, has been let go from Star Wars writing, at least kind of the same fashion. He was removed from the contributors page, and I checked recently, he's still not there. But for some reason, he still writes for Star Wars. So apparently, someone like Brian Young got removed for something far worse than this. I wonder how credible this is that he got let go. Not Brian Young, but this guy Alex got let go because of his opinions on Rose Tico or just in general. Goldman, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think of Disney or Lucasfilm? I mean, he says it's Disney. He didn't say it was Lucasfilm who did this, removing him from the StarWars.com website.
There's two sides to every story. If he said that he solely got let go just because he tweeted out Rose Tico deserved better, I'd like to hear what Claude does deserve better, by the way. I'm curious what Lucasfilm or Disney would say in response. Like, why is it solely just because he tweeted out Rose Tico deserved better? Did they give him a warning or something saying we don't really want you discussing this publicly? Something like that. I feel like it's important.
You don't even have to. That's literally freelancers means you're contracted, that you can get let go at any point.
This is out of my area of expertise, so I don't really know like much about what freelancers do. But all I say is that there's two sides to every story.
Yeah. I would like to. That's why I think it would be interesting if we could reach out to him, get him on the show or something like that.
What's his Twitter handle?
I'll send it to you. I'll DM it to you.
Send it in a private chat here or something.
Yeah, after the show. I wouldn't mind, especially you being living close to him and actually being a writer yourself, having a little bit more of a connection in that sense. But it would be nice to have someone like that on the show, get their opinions. We always kind of want to know about the workings and inner workings of Lucasfilm and Disney, but just kind of the culture of what goes on over there, I think is a lot more interesting right now as well. No, Darth asks, who got fired? It's a Star Wars writer for the Star Wars website, Alex Kane. Yeah, he said he got let go because of opinion on Rose Tico. I just think that nowadays it's kind of interesting when this stuff gets out, because we always claim that certain companies like Disney or Lucasfilm have agendas that they want to go for. This seems to be against their agenda. Tweeting positive stuff for Rose Tico while also criticizing Rise of Skywalker. I mean, if there's a if there's a side to pick in the Civil War, people are claiming between Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy, where the hell does Alex Kane fit in all this? I mean, it doesn't really seem like he's picking a side there. So I do want to get your guys' last thoughts on this subject. Lunga, do you think Disney or Lucasfilm is cracking down on fair criticism of either their work or the property?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, but here's the thing. When I say definitely, are they any different than any other studio? No.
Nah, probably.
Other studios do the same thing. Do you think they want that much? Do you think they want someone who they pay, who's under their employee, to talk bad about stuff? They're like, we got enough people out there who talk bad about it not being employed. We don't need our employees doing it. I mean, it's a common practice. I mean, it sucks. Yeah. And in his position as a freelance writer, I get it. We're loud people. we're loud people, and we don't want our opinions stifled, especially if you have a critic near your name in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, how much of it becomes this fluff battle? You know what I mean? That there may have been other circumstances, like Goldman said too, other than just one tweet. We don't know the whole story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens in the future with him. I guess I don't see him coming back to the Star Wars website, though. After saying things like they're the lowest paying client that I've worked with, but like that, I'm like, even and I'll be honest, from what I know about Lucasfilm, they do pay very low, especially being out there in San Francisco. You talk about high cost of living and taxes. My God, I'm from Texas. I can never survive in San Francisco. But
by the way, I'm looking at his profile. His favorite Star Wars film is Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I wondered if anyone was going to get that, because when I looked at his when I put up his profile, I think this one right here, it says that it might be too small for your text, but on the far right side it says favorite scene, favorite character.
Yeah, I'm watching that. Favorite I got it open up. Yeah.
So I would think that this would have a larger reaction in the fandom, not only because of who he is, someone who works with the StarWars.com. This is a guy who would kind of be in the know a little bit more than us per se, but he also kind of is like the modern day Star Wars fan. Grew up with the prequel trilogy. He's a millennial. He's the guy who his favorite movie is Revenge of the Sith. All the prequel fans, large part Fandom Menace, I feel like these guys would be fully supporting him right now, and kind of what happened. But I haven't heard much.
There's quite a few articles by him.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's been around the block. That's why it was surprising that he stopped and they're just kind of let him go. But never badmouth the mouse if you want to keep your job.
Yeah,
LOL.
pretty much.
Yep. Big shout out to Matt Jarbo. Thanks for viewing, buddy. I'm glad to see you're watching the Chatooine show. Matt would know about this stuff too. Sometimes if you badmouth the mouse, they're gonna take you out. You can't. It's weird now that they're buying so many different properties and things too. I mean, they own so many franchises, like the Alien franchise, and what all they own now is a little terrifying.
I always go back to, and my family, my kids, and my ex-wife always laugh at me because when Disney first bought ESPN and ABC, which was back in like 2000 or something like that.
Yeah, early 2000s.
I said the rat is getting out of hand, and the rat's going to end up owning the world. Watch out, and look where we're at.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't even the rat, though. That's the thing about it, is that this all happened because of one man, Bob Iger. Bob Iger was the big CEO who came in and was like, you know what? If they do it better, I'll buy them out.
You can't beat them, buy them.
Yeah, that's his big pitch to the board. He's like, you know what? Lucasfilm is making better films than us. They have better technology than us. They're more innovative than us. Fuck it, we're going to buy them. Pixar, you ever heard of them? Great company. Steve Jobs made an amazing film of Cars. He's not going to really let us a sequel. He's not going to let us distribute it the way we want. We want to get bigger profits on Cars too. How do we get money on it? You know what? We'll just buy them out. National Geographic, in the documentary mood. Yeah, I am too. Let's get a few $1 billion and buy them out. And then Bob Iger's like, all right, I think I'm going to finally settle down, retire. And then someone over there at the Disney Empire was like, hey, what about Fox? And he's like, I'll stay on and I'll buy Fox too. Yeah. I mean, what doesn't Disney own? Actually, a big shout out to our sponsor today, Disney on Disney Plus. You can check out
Oh, did you see that? Oh, by the way, speaking of Star Wars stuff, which is pretty cool. I don't know if they put out the Star Wars YouTube channel put out this Empire Strikes Back time capsule little video. Which is all these interviews and outtakes with Irving Kershing and the actors and stuff during the time and Lucas, and I loved watching it. I was like, this is cool. You know, I just love how they're talking about. It's like, you know, George's like, well, it's not really sci-fi, it's fantasy. You know, it's just like and he's going on about it, and
I need to watch that.
Yeah, it was really good. And then at one point they're talking to Mark Hamill and they're talking about the romance possibly between Han Solo and Leia, and Mark Hamill is like, is that so? I want to see this first. Like he's trying to play it off like that's not happening.
Yeah. No, I've always loved the interviews with Irvin Kershner because if you guys ever seen the one with it's kind of in the same time frame when they interviewed it too, but it was Empire of Dreams, and they interview Irvin.
Great documentary.
Amazing documentary. One of my favorites for the Star Wars franchise. There's a lot of them out there that I'd love to recommend and start looking at, but that's one of the more known ones because it's on Disney Plus. But Irvin says that, you know, Star Wars, it isn't a sci-fi movie. It's not science fiction. It's a fairy tale, and I think that's where a lot of Star Wars fans lose, in my opinion, what Star Wars truly is about, because so many times, and I hate to call them out, I mainly get it with the expanded universe fans, where I'll talk about Star Wars as a franchise, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, but do you know where the Kyber crystals come from, what planet they're on, and how they're made, and that the red ones need to be turned because they're evil? It's like, hey, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
that doesn't mean
and Kirshner says it in it. He's like, where does this make? How did he make that? Where does this come from? Who cares? He says that in that video.
He talks about like the fuel. Like if you talk about the Millennium Falcon, like how it just seamlessly goes from planet to planet, burning nonstop fuel, and they never mention it once. That's part of what adds to that fairy tale aspect of it, and I love it. Goldman,
you know what's one of my favorite Irvin Kershner quotes, and I can't remember where he said this, but he said something along the lines of Star Wars is about not fighting what you hate, but saving what you love.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, he said that?
he did say that once.
Sounds familiar.
That does sound a little familiar. I may have to ask my boy Alex Kane, the writer, if that's true.
Ask him. No, but I don't remember where he said it, but I don't think it was an interview. I think it was in a book somewhere. But I'm almost certain that he I recall watching a video where he was quoted saying that in a book or something. But yeah, just an interesting quote. No other context needed.
I was about to say something along the lines of that because, see, for someone like me, I would be like, I don't hate The Last Jedi as much as the other people do, but I'm like, man, that's a really odd line for someone like him to say for being such a good storyteller that he is. But if you told me, like, not told me, but if you told the fans George Lucas said that, oh, Goldman, you better back. I mean, somebody would pull up to your house and, what'd you say about Lucas? You think he quoted The Last Jedi, you piece of shit? Like, oh, man.
It's not saving what you love.
Yeah, I would have loved the George Lucas Force Ghost cameo at the end. The Skywalker saga really wasn't about the ending and Palpatine coming back. It was really about the money I made and the story that you guys told along the way. And
I would love it just as Force will complain and say, and if the fans don't like it, that's too bad. And then just
and then an after credit scene with George Lucas as a ghost. I would love that.
yeah, I would say, like him closing the book and just being like, and that's it. That's the story of the Skywalker saga and how I made billions of dollars off your stupidity. Thank you.
and now is the time to cue that clip. Star Wars Only.
At the end of it all,
I may have gone too far in a few places.
that would not be going too far if he went in after credits.
You know what? Right hand of God, when I do become Lucasfilm president, because by the time I hit 70, the franchise will be dead and they'll just hand it off to anybody. By the time I'm Lucasfilm president, the last shot of episode 15 is the opening shot is going to be this.
That's great.
It's going to be great.
That's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
That's going to be great.
About halfway through, there's going to be a random ass cameo that everyone's going to unfortunately have to get because it's going to be in theaters.
Star Wars only. I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
That's the opening crawl, and then the final scene, like literally right after the credits are over.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
That's the whole movie right there.
Excellent president, Star Wars only.
No, I love
that.
That'd be the best. I mean, people got mad at Lucas.
Sluice, he asked about my background. It was one of the ones that Lucasfilm gave out for everyone to use for like backgrounds.
On the Star Wars website.
It's basically it's a view from the Death Star, so it's like looking out from the Death Star.
I think that was from Rogue One, actually.
So it probably was, but it's from inside the Death Star. That's all I know.
I like this. I made you guys think I gave a shit and made billions with a B, billions. A big B, baby. George is a gangster. Say what you will, and call us shills if you want. George is the biggest shill of them all. He's got billions of dollars in Disney stock. That boy went up today. Disney pays 1.6% dividend per year. All right, Lunga, do the math. How much money is $2 billion a year times 1.6%?
A shit ton.
Yeah, more than I'll ever make.
Let me put it to you like this: if George Lucas just gave me a fourth of his shares in Disney stock, I'd never work a day in my life again. I mean,
just give me the fractional pennies of the interest he earns on his bank account. Okay,
George, give me the dividends you make a year, and I promise
a little office space actions. Those fractions of a penny. Just give me those.
Yeah. Jesus, that man is balling. Well, my friends, that is it for today's episode of the Chatooine Show. Today was a good show. Thank you all for joining us on the Chatooine Show. We host Chatooine on Friday nights, and we'll return on June 5th. Now that our stream is ending, make sure you hop over to the Goldman's channel, who's doing a celebration stream for reaching 200 subscribers. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you very much, Star Wars Only. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. We're glad to have you on, and you're a big part of the channel now because of Chatooine Show. It's going to be a permanent thing here, and they're always fun. It was mainly this one. This one's been a good one so far. Lunga, how close are you to being monetized now? Are you almost there?
I popped over 700 the other day.
Awesome.
So just a little under 300 more subscribers to get to the monetization.
There you go. So go check out both of their channels. Link to the Goldman's channel and Darth Daddy Lunga are in the description below. Thank you all for joining us on the Chatooine Show. And until next time, friends, we can't wait to talk to you again. This has been a good stream. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.